Hey, it's Sam from Sugar Spun Run, and today we are making monster cookies. So today's cookie recipe is a lot of fun. It's great for adults, don't get me wrong, but kids especially love this one, and I think it's because of the name. They're called monster cookies. Couldn't tell you exactly why they're called that. I think it has to do with a monstrous amount of add-ins that we're throwing into the cookie base. Whatever the reason, they're really good, so let's go ahead and get started with making them. So to help these cookies live up to their name, we're going to be making them pretty big. We're going to be using 3 tablespoons of dough, which means we're going to get 15 cookies out of this batch. I'm telling you that in advance because if you want more cookies, you can double the recipe, no problem. We are going to be starting with 10 tablespoons, so this is 1 stick plus 2 tablespoons of softened unsalted butter. Remember, anytime you are using softened butter, that butter should not be melty or oily or greasy looking. It should still have a slight chill at the very core of it. If your butter's too soft, it can cause your cookies to spread more than you want them to. Next thing you need is 2/3 cup of brown sugar. You always want to firmly pack your brown sugar, especially if you are using measuring cups. Now, you could use either light or dark brown sugar with this recipe. The difference is light brown sugar is going to give you a cookie that's lighter in color. Dark brown sugar is going to give you a cookie that's a bit sweeter and richer. What I like to do is a blend of both, so 1/3 cup of each of them. Well, you get a nice balance, but if you only have one on hand or you don't feel like getting out 2 bags of brown sugar, don't sweat it, just use whichever is easiest for you. We do need a little bit of granulated sugar as well. We'll be using 1/4 cup of that. And then one thing that's consistent with monster cookies across the board is they are usually built on a peanut butter base. So today's recipe actually starts off with my peanut butter cookie recipe as its base, which is a great cookie, soft, buttery, amazing. So we're going to have a nice peanut butter flavor infused through our cookies. Now you need 1/2 cup of creamy peanut butter. Drop that right in. And you could make today's recipe in your stand mixer if you have one. I am just going to be using my electric hand mixer today. And I'm going to cream together these ingredients until they're really well combined. First thing though, always plug in your mixer. There we go. Funny how much better it works when you plug it in. Always plug in your mixer before using. Follow me for more great baking tips. All right, so I mixed this for like 1.5 minutes on medium-high speed. And what I'm looking for is the mixture's nice and creamy, well combined, a little bit lightened in texture. What we've done is we've whipped some air into the batter, which is just going to help with the structure of our cookies. All right, next up, we are going to be adding 1 large egg. Ideally, your egg should be at room temperature. I'm just going to use my sugar bowl, crack the egg into that. That way, if I get any shell in there, it's easy to remove it. With most of my cookie recipes, you'll see that I call for room temperature ingredients. This just helps everything combine really nicely and is going to give you a nice uniform dough that bakes really well. All right, we'll also be adding a teaspoon of vanilla extract, which adds a nice flavor. I have to tell you guys, I saw someone the other day say you don't actually need to add vanilla extract to a cookie recipe. It was a post, it was being shared on Facebook, it hurt my heart. If the recipe calls for vanilla extract, please use it. It's my public service announcement. So we're going to just stir these in until everything's well combined and our batter is looking nice and uniform again. If you need to, scrape the sides and bottom of your bowl. And we will scrape the sides and bottom of the bowl. It's easy for some of the ingredients to kind of settle and hide on the bottom of the bowl, and that's especially true when you're using a stand mixer because most of them have like a little divot at the bottom where butter and other ingredients like to hide, so make sure you're scraping your bowl. All right, so our wet ingredients, move these out of the way. We're going to grab a separate bowl for our dry ingredients. So the first thing we need for our dry ingredients is 1 cup of all-purpose flour. Since I feel like we're talking a lot of baking tips today, I just want to share with you that I do include all weight measurements for every ingredient in the recipe card in the printable recipe. I actually measure all of my ingredients by weight. I provide them in cups because I know most people use cups, but if you really want to level up your baking game, using a scale and weighing your ingredients is one of the best ways to do that. All right, gonna step off my scale soapbox. We'll add our cornstarch. We're going to be using a teaspoon of cornstarch. And I like using cornstarch in my cookies because it's just one of those ingredients that keeps the cookies from spreading too much, but still keeps them soft. We're also going to add 3/4 teaspoon of baking soda. Let's whisk these together until the ingredients are nicely combined. May not seem like a lot of dry ingredients at this point compared to our wet ingredient ratio, but don't forget we have a lot of add-ins to add. Oh, salt! Don't forget your salt. I was just talking about flavor. If you need 3/4 teaspoon of table salt, please don't forget that. My gosh. Whisk this in as well. You want that nicely distributed. All right, bring back our peanut butter mixture, which smells amazing. Let's go ahead and add this in. Since it's not a whole lot of flour, I'll usually just add it all at once. A lot of recipes, when we're working with more flour, I recommend adding it gradually. Ooh, but we'll go ahead and we'll stir this in. All right, let's scrape the bowl. Okay, now let's get to our add-ins. First ingredient, classic Monster cookie ingredient, is oats. We're going to be adding a cup of quick oats. I do prefer quick oats with this recipe. They just give the cookie a better texture. All right, next up is our candies and chocolate that we're going to be adding. Now you have a little bit of wiggle room with this in case you have different preferences than I do. But the first thing I add is, normally I would add M&Ms. I'm using these different candy-coated chocolates instead. They're the same thing as M&Ms, but they don't have any food dye in them because, I don't know, when you become a mom, sometimes you start thinking about things like food dye and you pick different ingredients. Never mind all the sugar. But these are unreal chocolates. You can use M&Ms. Those would work as well. We're going to add a half cup of these. So I add a half cup into the batter, but then I also keep some extra on the side that I'm gonna put on top of the cookies, but we'll talk about that later. We're also going to be adding a third cup each of some chips. I'm adding a third cup of semi-sweet chocolate chips, and I'm also adding a third cup of butterscotch chips. If you prefer to substitute white chocolate chips, peanut butter chips, hard to find, but they exist, or even more chocolate chips or milk chocolate chips, that's fine, do whatever you prefer. Now that's what I put in the dough, but I do also reserve some extra chips and candies for pressing on top of cookies. Now let's go ahead and fold these ingredients into the batter. I usually do this part by hand, just because the beaters can break up the candy, and I don't really want to do that. And once everything's combined, we're going to cover the bowl with plastic wrap because it does need to chill. The dough needs to chill for at least 30 minutes. It's going to help the flavor develop, help the cookies keep from spreading too much. And when that dough is close to being done chilling, you want to get your oven preheating to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, 30 minutes later, we're ready to start baking our cookie dough. Your oven should always be preheated completely before you add any dough to it. So our oven should be at 350. We're going to make some big cookies. I have my 1.5 tablespoon size scoop. I'm going to use this twice, so we are using 3 tablespoons of dough per cookie to make them feel truly monstrous. I always line my baking sheets with parchment paper, just makes cleanup a little bit easier. 1 scoop, 2 scoop, and then I just kind of gently roll the cookies between my hands. It's a little bit messy, that's okay. And the cookies can have a tendency to not want to spread a whole bunch, so I just gently flatten them with my hands. And space the cookies at least 2 inches apart. Just want to give them some breathing room while they're baking. Obviously, if you have a 3 tablespoon size scoop, you can use that instead. I use this size cookie scoop for just about everything. I will link to it. Actually, I have one I like a little bit better these days, so I will link to that one in the description. Or remind me if I forget. Sometimes I forget. And I will cover up the cookie dough and put it back in the refrigerator so it stays cold while these cookies are baking. All right, we are going to take these cookies over to our preheated oven. We're going to bake them in the center rack where they will need to bake for about 13 to 14 minutes. A little less if you're using a dark pan, maybe a little bit more if you're using a light colored pan. Now, while the cookies are baking, I also like to prep my cookie toppings. So I have the candies ready, and I'll show you what we do with them when our cookies are out of the oven. So when the cookies come out of the oven, the edges may be beginning to turn like a light golden brown color. The centers may look slightly underbaked still. That's totally fine and actually desirable. It's going to let the cookies finish baking on the baking sheet, which is going to ultimately make them softer and chewier and just stay softer longer. Now, I'm kind of like a cookie perfectionist, so I will usually round my cookies a little bit in case they're not perfectly round. I mean, as you can see, they're totally fine as is, but with cookies, I just like to go the extra mile. Some people will use like a large round cookie cutter for this step. I don't like to do that, not my preference. And then we talked about our toppings. We're going to take these, and within 2 minutes of the cookies coming out of the oven, if you're going to do this step, you're just going to lightly press the add-ins on top of the cookies. This is completely optional. It will give you more candy per bite, but the cookies are fine without this too. But don't they look prettier? And just be gentle, gently nestle them in, just enough so that the candy can start to melt a little bit, and then as it cools, it'll stick to the surface of the cookie. Just a little extra with my cookies. Butterscotch are really sweet, so I don't like to do too many of those, not too many extra. All right, now we're going to let these cool completely on the baking sheet, or at least for 10 minutes on the baking sheet. If you do 10 minutes, move them to a cooling rack after that, but let them cool completely before you dig in because they're big and they could fall apart on you while they're still warm. And that is how you make these incredible monster cookies. If you try them, let me know what you think. I always love hearing from you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. That was a good cookie. You need, oops, let's grab a spatula first. You want the big one? No. You want this part? Yeah. Because the dough, Freya, you'll want to get your oven preheating to 350. Is that good, Rhett?